48 hours in the making. The beginning of the beginning. What you see here is a container full of what makes me, me. These were the words posted on January 18th of 2008 by a man calling himself Future's father. He was describing a jar containing his bodily fluids. What appears to be a small amount of liquid colored cough medicine pink. A jar whose contents he'd give a name. Adam. Now, you've heard about a lot of fluid-filled jars on this channel, but while those were all someone's secret shame, this one was a man's pride and joy. A science experiment that he thought of as a son. A jar that he was eager to share with the world, or at least with 4chan posters based on some of the comments his blog received. And unlike other stories like his, where people were surprised that they had accidentally created life, his goal was to create life. Like Lisa Simpson if she was on image boards. Would he succeed at creating miniature Lutherans? Let's find out in today's episode of Tales from the Internet. This video is sponsored by Helix. Helix makes premium mattresses and bedding custom fit to your needs and shipped right to your door. Everyone sleeps differently, so Helix has you take a sleep quiz to match your body type and sleep preferences. I'm a side sleeper, so Helix set me up with a Sunset mattress. This year, Helix launched their newest and most high-end collection yet, the Helix Elite mattress. They put their years of extensive mattress expertise to use to create a truly elevated sleep experience. The Helix Elite collection includes 6 different mattress models to combine high-end luxury with personalized comfort tailored to your preferences. Helix delivers your mattress right to your door with free shipping in the US, comes rolled up in a box, and is easy to set up. And to make sure you love your Helix mattress, there's a 100 nights of sleep trial. You also get a 10-year warranty, as well as financing options and flexible payment plans. Also, Helix mattresses are fiberglass free. If you've been thinking about upgrading your mattress, now's the perfect time to do it. For the month of October, Helix is offering my followers an exclusive discount. Get 25% off your purchase, plus 2 free pillows. Just go to helixsleep.com/wang and you'll receive a unique promo code for 25% off. It expires October 31st, so be sure to use it before the end of the month. A few years ago on YouTube, homunculus egg experiments were all the rage. You would have these dudes that would inject semen into chicken eggs and whatnot. Perhaps the most infamous of these being the Russian homunculus experiment, which I might cover at some point on the channel, so subscribe and hit notifications. But this experiment right here went down in relative obscurity, nearly a decade before the trend. Not for clicks, just for the love of the game. In the initial unveiling post, Future's father marks the date of Adam's creation as January 19th, 2008, and he promises to provide regular updates on Adam's progress. Although he admits that in those first 48 hours, there was no progress. Rome wasn't built in a day. He also admits that he has no idea what to expect from this, so he's as much along for the ride as we are. But judging by the solved Rubik's Cube sandwiched between Adam and a jar of Vaseline, this is a very scientifically minded individual. As he puts it, the philosophical and existential implications of my little project are numerous. He also invites people to comment with suggestions on how we can improve the project, and a small amount of suggestions would come through. People wanted him to add things like strands of hair, scabs, Gatorade so Adam gets the electrolytes he needs, using a straw for air, or shooting electricity into it like Frankenstein. You also had one commenter who laid out why this would not do anything at all. I don't know what you're trying to accomplish. The semen will die in the blood because, I don't know, sperm don't live in blood. They will also die after 1 to 2 days due to the fact that sperm cannot divide without an egg. And why even use blood? Use Dolbeck's medium. Dolbeck's medium being a substance used for cell cultures in labs. It's much better at providing nutrients. But like I said, the point of nutrients is moot since the sperm won't divide. It is genetically impossible. Maybe if you can get a girl to help out. That's a great opening line right there. Hey babe, you want to help me create life with a jar filled with blood and semen? And like the other guy said, bacteria/fungus are going to get into your concoction through the air, and it's gonna start smelling funky and looking weird. And although the readers knew that this jar contained Future's father's bodily fluids, they didn't know what the exact makeup of it was. So we'd have to explain in a subsequent post. As of right now, Adam consists of the following: several teaspoons of blood and semen, 1 hair with its root still intact, and a bit of mucus, all inside a sealed container which is kept between 60 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit. I supply the container with fresh blood whenever I'm able and introduce new sperm into the mixture as often as possible. In the near future, I plan to set up some sort of ventilation for Adam. The easiest method was suggested to me earlier, and that would be a straw going down into the container through the cover, to give Adam fresh air without worrying about combating evaporation. As for what his actual goal with this was, he just wanted to create some sort of life. Ideally, he was hoping for something unique and interesting to form, some kind of creature. But realistically, he'd have been content with just a little bit of mold, which, as you may have seen on this channel before, it's a pretty likely outcome. The reason why he chose to use blood and semen was that he felt that these were the substances that most contained his essence. And he wanted to avoid using waste products like, pee and poo, because he thought that the bacteria they'd introduce would ruin the experiment. I'm sure you have some idea of how he may have collected the semen, but there's a lot of different ways you can collect blood, and he didn't want to cut himself for this experiment, which is honestly kind of surprising, because with this kind of thing, there's always like a little bit of a magical aura. It almost seems like the experiment would lend itself to pricking a finger or something. Instead, what he would do is sterilize his mouth with hydrogen peroxide, alcohol, and hot water. Then he would aggressively floss until his gums were bleeding, and just spit that mix into the jar. A few readers expressed concern that the mix of hydrogen peroxide and alcohol could bring harm to Adam, but Future's father thought that this might actually help prevent the jar from getting too gross. Some readers also suggested introducing a female egg to the mix, which, that stuff's kind of expensive. And also, he said that he didn't want to risk creating a human, which I can just picture in a situation like this. You make a little human, and it comes out looking like one of the Bliblies from Smiling Friends. But after getting some sleep, Future's father woke up to a disturbing discovery. Adam had been evaporating. You see, knowing that living things need oxygen to survive, he left Adam uncovered. But he knew that he needed a better way or Adam would simply vanish. So he wound up taking the earlier user suggestion and using a plastic straw through a hole for ventilation. He also made a bit of a discovery in Adam's evolution. It's hard to see in pictures, and I did my best to capture it, but it looks like an opaque cloud is beginning to form around the little blob of mucus in the center of the container. It could just be remnants of my saliva or semen, but I'd at least like to think for a while that there could be some sort of protein forming, using the mucus as a nucleus. Most notably, the single hair had attached itself to this nucleus. He also floats the idea of adding earwax to the concoction, and he's got this big picture of earwax that you just know that was real satisfying to get out. And he says that earwax has these antibacterial and antifungal properties that might help Adam. Some commenters suggested that it might actually have the opposite effect, while others say he's going to have to use just a little amount. With all these different ideas of what may or may not happen, some commenters were suggesting that he should do a bunch of different jars with different mixes of stuff to see how they turn out. But there's only so much blood and semen one man can extract by himself. Day 5 comes around and now he has a microscope. But it only has up to 75 times magnification, and you need at least 400 times to see sperm cells, so he's probably not gonna see that much. But in any case, he's gonna wait a bit before putting it under the microscope. In the meantime, he's added more semen and blood, and the nucleus appears to have vanished. He asked the readers about this observation that he's made. I find it curious that everything I put into the mixture retains its shape and color for quite some time. After several hours, the whole mixture is once again homogenized, and one element is not discernible from another within the translucent orange goulash. Is this an indicator of the development of life? Is it safe to assume that something living is absorbing the different substances? Or is it simply the result of several liquids being combined into one? Which, yeah, I would assume that would be what would happen eventually when you just mix a bunch of different liquids. Unless, either your blood or semen were particularly oily, in which case you should probably be more concerned with your own health rather than the health of a jar of fluids. Or, maybe you're just Greek or Italian or something, I don't know. The next day, however, this observation would be proven to be a false alarm, as he found the blood was pooling at the bottom of the container. It was at this point that he decided he should just leave it alone for a few days. And he would write an update at the end of the first week. Within Adam's first week of development, I've seen lots of changes. The most notable change is the volume of the mixture. Little by little, Adam's volume is growing, and that's just how I expect the developments to introduce themselves to me. If you consider organic growth, it is a very slow process. Maybe slow isn't the right word. Deliberate and subtle more accurately describe the way in which things develop naturally over time. Consider how long it takes to grow your hair out, or to grow it all. From day to day, you don't notice many changes. This is the same reason why a human fetus's growth is recorded in terms of weeks or months rather than days. These small changes translate to an infinitesimal daily growth. I'm not making excuses for Adam's apparent lack of development. I'm merely trying to explain why it may seem like nothing is changing. These things take time, and since I intend to let Adam grow with a minimal amount of human interference, it may take a lot of time. All I'm asking from you, as a reader, is to be patient and try to stay curious, because it is becoming quite clear that this experiment is going to take a long time to yield any worthwhile results. I intend to continue with what I'm doing for at least 9 months, and I'll continue past that if I feel that I should. He also notes that the individual pieces of the mixture had once again separated to some degree, with the mucous nucleus again becoming apparent, although its one strand of hair had fallen out. Damn, I should have gotten a Keep sponsorship for this video. He likens the separation of the blood, cum, and mucus into their own individual pieces to the development of organelles in primitive life forms. In any case, he realizes that it's a slow process, so updates will come less frequently. The next post would come on day 13. The biggest changes at this point would be that the strand of hair had completely dissolved, and he began to observe the formation of what he would call a structure in the blood, which was suspended inside the semen and was attached to the mucous nucleus. I'm not quite seeing what I'd call a structure here, but you can see it separating into different sections. Kinda reminds me of eye surgery or something. In any case, if there's no major changes soon, he's ready to introduce something new, potentially earwax. He also notes that the semen seems to devolve into the mix remarkably fast. To demonstrate this, he provides images documenting a 3-minute time-lapse of the semen melting into the jar like that picture of the chocolate gorilla melting into the milk. He also finally tried out his 75 times magnification microscope, and he saw nothing. Although he remains dedicated to seeing this experiment through to the end, you can kinda see his excitement about it dwindling a little bit here, as he jokes about adding caffeine to speed things up. But the next post is probably my favorite of this entire journey. Adam's 1-month birthday party. He even got balloons, a cupcake with a candle, and he made a little birthday hat. But aside from the birthday party, this post also marks the most noticeable changes since the beginning of the experiment. The mixture had now fully homogenized and thickened into what he described as a colloidal substance. He also observed a crust forming around where the top of Adam touches the container, with oily rainbow-colored spots. I don't know if this is the beginning of the formation of some sort of life form, or if it's just some oil from my skin that found its way into the mixture from my blood or semen. If I had to guess, I would assume that this was all the result of bacteria making its way into the mix and doing its thing, but in any case, this is real progress and it seems to have reinvigorated things a bit. The next update would come a month later. It was on March 23rd of 2008 that he celebrated the birth of Adam 2. No, I said Adam 2, not Adam 22. That comes later, I assume. Although he hadn't given up on Adam 1 and he believed that more changes would eventually come, he wanted to see if things would move along faster if he changed some of the variables. While he had taken care to make sure that Adam 1 would be as sterile as possible, Adam 2 contained substances that he believed would be full of bacteria. After cleaning out a jar that he had previously used to keep a spider in, he filled it with blood and pus from an infected hair follicle and scrapings from his tongue. Although he planned to add more to it, he said the pus was probably a one-time thing. The way he puts it, he claims that pus is the only thing more difficult to harvest than sperm. Which, I don't know, in my life I've not found semen to be that difficult to produce. You know, sometimes I even do it for fun. And judging from the contents of the jars, it doesn't seem like he's exactly been working himself down to where he's shooting powder. Clearly he just needs his zinc and L-arginine supplements. In any case, he expects this bacteria-rich bounty to make Adam 2 develop faster. And reading this, I have the same expectations. And this would in fact be confirmed in a post a few months later entitled, Beyond the First Trimester. Adam 2 is repulsive and vile. Over a month ago, I stopped adding new material to Adam 2 because of the smell. It's really astonishing how such a small volume of a substance, less than 35 milliliters, can have such a pungent, overpowering odor. I always hold my breath before I remove the cover from the jar, but that isn't enough. Even after I replace the cover, the smell lingers in the air and has already filled a significant portion of the room. The smell is one of rot and decay, and is extremely unpleasant, to say the least. He notes that while Adam 1 also has a smell, it's nowhere near as strong and you would basically have to put your nose in the jar to smell it. The pictures provided of Adam 2, which had since had more saliva and tongue scrapings added, kinda look like honey, which I guess in a way this kind of is man honey. He also began yet another experiment, this one much more visually interesting. This one contained a variety of substances that he declined to name. He sealed it and left it in the dark, and in under a month, mold had taken over completely. This massive difference in growth inspired him to potentially try making different versions of Adam 1 and 2, sealed and unsealed, dark and light. Got a modern-day Gregor Mendel right here. The next update would show some major changes to Adam 1's condition. What was once a viscous and colloidal substance was now black and nearly solid. He said that he would poke the surface and would make little dents and peaks, but it would eventually return back to the surface and flatten out. He wasn't sure if this was due to the humid weather they had been having or if this is just the natural course of things with this type of substance. On the other hand, surprisingly, Adam 2 had seen no changes at all, but this hadn't killed his motivation. What I learned from Adam 2 is this: after 3 months, a bacteria-rich substance that is sealed and exposed regularly to light will yield nothing of interest. Of course, that doesn't mean I'm going to pack it all in and give up. It just means I'm going to keep waiting and watching while I start developing new specimens upon which I'll test numerous variables, both in terms of the contents of the substances and the environments in which they are kept. In about 1 month, I'm going to start testing more bacteria-rich substances under various conditions, because these are easier to make than something that more closely resembles Adam. I'll make 3 or 4 new specimens similar to Adam 2 at once. While they're developing over time, I'll start putting together another mixture that is identical in its contents to Adam and keep it in a different environment. He mentions that he'd also started another similar but unrelated experiment that had a bunch of bugs that lived and died in a jar. Did not provide any pictures of this. From that point on though, we would not hear from Future's father for almost another year. He would make one more post on May 11th of 2009. In conclusion, this post is weirdly bittersweet considering, it's about jars of cum and blood. It's probably the most emotional thing I've ever read on this subject, which, I've probably, for better or for worse, read more than most on this subject. What started as a silly, sophomoric pseudoscience project has become so much more. As the ultimate culmination of my scientific curiosities, artistic inclination, and whimsical thinking, Adam has been a resounding success. The results of this experiment, if it ever really had been such a thing, are disappointing to the part of my imagination that first dreamt up this whole thing. The scientist in me is not at all surprised. The artist is beside himself with satisfaction and a sense of accomplishment. And honestly, although I guess it does feel kind of lofty for him to refer to himself as an artist in this context, I've definitely seen similar, but much less ambitious projects presented as art. But ultimately, neither art nor science were his real goals with this project. He admits that this whole thing was much more personal than he let on, and in a way it was kind of a coping mechanism. I stopped taking care of Adam many months ago. Around the time he began evaporating beyond my control due to humidity, I more or less gave up on him. That was probably when I should have been adding fresh blood and semen to him the most, but instead I put him away in a dark cabinet, and didn't look at him more than 3 times within twice as many months. The original feeling out of which Adam was born, loneliness, no longer drove me at that point. Adam had served his purpose to that end, providing me with a de facto companion and an engrossing hobby while I endured the overwhelming pain of feeling completely alone. When my life seemed to be turning around, I no longer needed Adam in that regard. It's good to hear that, for once, the internal struggle that led someone to become a weird guy online was resolved and they came out better on the other end. That being said, although it wasn't his original intention, this whole experience left him with some thoughts about the nature of humanity. Adam has met an end that none of us will be able to avoid. Part of my intention with this project was to create something as unhuman as possible, and see just how human it could become. I did not ever really expect to achieve this in a biological sense. I do feel, however, that I pulled it off in some regards. Adam quickly became human to me, even if his form was composed entirely of dead material that never showed any signs of promising change or developing life. Through the months of neglect, having outlived their usefulness, each of the atoms reverted to piles of dry crust, and in this way, we're more like these jars, blood and cum, than we are different. So while Future's father didn't quite succeed in his goals as a scientist, he did succeed as an artist. Because what is art, if not a medium through which we can reflect and come out with a better understanding of the human condition? That mold jar though, that shit went crazy. This just looks like kombucha, honestly. It probably even tastes like kombucha, although I assume he didn't try it. But anyway, that is the story of Adam. Shout out to Yaelzebub on Instagram who suggested this to me like a year ago. And if you like this video, check out my interview with the My Little Pony cum jar guy. I'm out. You look so bad on your